Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for our webinar about raising girls who like themselves, hosted by Geelong Regional Libraries. I'm Casey Edwards.
And I'm Chris Scanlon. Before we get underway this evening, I'd like to pay our respects to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people as the traditional owners of the land that we're on. We pay our respects to elders of the Wurundjeri Nation, past, present, and emerging. We acknowledge and celebrate First Nation peoples of this land as the custodians of learning, literacy, knowledge, and story. And we acknowledge their sovereignty has never been ceded. It always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Well, first of all, a bit of housekeeping tonight. Tonight's session is being recorded and it will be uploaded to the library's YouTube channel in the coming days. So if you'd like to share, please feel free to pass it on.
So we're going to be talking to you for about 40 minutes tonight, and then we're going to have questions at the end. So if you have questions along the way, drop them into the Q&A section. If you're watching on your phone or an iPad, you might need to tap the screen to bring up the Q&A section. And our concierge, Meg, who's online today, she'll be gathering up those questions and we'll be answering them at the end.
Well, first of all, a bit of an introduction about who we are. We're researchers and writers. I teach at Deakin University in Melbourne and sometimes Geelong, although not since COVID. My work is, I work in communications and I teach journalism. I've got a PhD in politics and my work has been across the humanities and social sciences. Casey is one of Australia's most read columnists and together we've written 8 books. But for the past 10 years, what we've been doing is researching and writing about parenting, particularly girls. And our articles have generated hundreds of thousands of comments and have been read and shared by over 10 million people.
But here's what we really want you to know. After the birth of our first daughter, Violet, we now have 2 daughters. We've got Violet, who's 11, and Ivy, who's 6. So after Violet was born in 2009, we wanted to work out how to be the very best parents that we could be because we felt woefully underprepared for such an important task. So we read all the books we could get our hands on. We trawled through all the academic research. And being journalists, we have the very rare privilege of being able to phone up the world's leading experts in childhood development, psychology, well-being, and education, and ask them our questions. And so we did. And then one day we were at a child's birthday party and we were talking about our research to our friends. And one of our friends said to us, "I don't have time to read all of that. Can you just tell me what I have to do?" And we thought, yeah, we can actually. So we pulled together all the answers that we had been searching for and found. And we put them together in our book, Raising Girls Who Like Themselves, which just happens to be here. So we'll be talking more about that later. But before we do, I just want to share with you a more personal reason about why I wanted to write Raising Girls Who Like Themselves. And it is this, that I wanted my girls to grow up liking themselves more than I did when I was growing up. And as our research progressed, I realized that it wasn't just me who grew up constantly feeling like I wasn't enough, feeling insecure, second guessing myself, deferring to other people to decide if I was okay. My friends felt like this. Our mothers felt like this. And I realized that this is a problem going back through generations, that girls and women have not liked themselves for a really long time. And if we want to raise our girls to have a different outcome, if we actually want them to like themselves, then we have to do something different. And that is the purpose of our book. And that's the research that we put into our book. Okay, we're just going to pop up our slides now. Just a moment, we're going to share screen and we'll come back and you'll be able to see our faces at the end of the presentation when we answer your questions. So do pop your questions in the chat as we go along. Sorry, not in the chat, in the Q&A section. Sorry. Okay, here we go. Oh, there we go.
Well, first of all, a bit of a disclaimer, if you like. One of the questions we often get asked is, what about boys? Don't we want our boys to like themselves too? And our answer to that is, yes, of course we do. But we're not the parents of boys, and that's not where our research has taken us. Our focus has been on girls. So you could say that we are sticking to our lane. We're focusing on what we've researched and where our focus has been. It's the same reason why we focus on girls from toddler to tween. It's because that's where our research and our focus has been.
Maybe you're worried that this book isn't going to apply to you, or what we're going to talk about tonight isn't going to apply to you if you don't have a nuclear family.
Well, our belief is that families come in all different forms: heterosexual parents, same-sex parents, single parents, separated and blended families, legal guardians, and multi-generational families. And we believe that all of which can be springs of love. For simplicity's sake, we have referred to the carers of children as parents, mothers, and fathers, but we consider these to be roles that can be fulfilled by any number of people in a child's life, not limited by biology, gender, or family structures.
Okay, let's start with the bad news. So our girls do have more opportunities than their mothers and grandmothers, but they are arguably more anxious, more insecure, and unhappier than ever before. So let's look at depression. 1 in 5 girls aged 16 to 17 meet the clinical criteria for depression.
Anxiety. Reported rates of anxiety are through the roof. Now, you might say that's because the reporting has gotten better, that GPs are more likely to recognise the signs of anxious kids and diagnose them properly. But even if that is the case, 1 in 14 girls, even among those under 10, reporting anxiety is a really alarming statistic.
Body image. We have heard the same story 4 times by parents. They tell the same story of their little girl, aged 6 and 7, wanting to slice off the rolls on her stomach with scissors. And it absolutely breaks our hearts to think of these little girls whose heads should be filled with fairy dust and unicorns have this intolerable hatred of their young, precious bodies.
Girls are increasingly turning that self-loathing in on themselves and acting it out. 1/4 of girls aged 14 to 15 have thoughts about self-harm, and 1/4 of 16 to 17-year-olds deliberately injure themselves.
Eating disorders. Now, sadly, eating disorders are not well understood. Some people think that an eating disorder is just a diet that's gone a bit too far. But make no mistake, eating disorders destroy lives. In fact, our girls now have a greater chance of dying from an eating disorder than they do from being abducted by a stranger on the street. Now, think about how much time we as parents spend worrying about and trying to reduce the risk of stranger danger compared with how much time we do not put into trying to reduce the risk of eating disorders.
Body autonomy. Girls say that they feel pressured to share sexy photos of themselves. And the language that they use when they talk to researchers is telling. They tell researchers, for example, that they have to do it in order to be accepted by boyfriends, even for a boy to even talk to them, to acknowledge their existence. It's as if they don't have a choice. And if they do exercise that choice, they'll be shunned. So if we don't want our girls to end up as statistics, then we need a different approach. And this is what we're really going to be talking to you about tonight, what this different approach might be. So we've put all of that knowledge and more into our book, Raising Girls Who Like Themselves. And we called the book that for a very simple reason. It's because we realize that's what our goal is. We don't want to just raise girls to be happy or leaders or all of those sort of things that you often hear about what we want for our kids. We want them to be able to like themselves.
Because absolutely everything that we hope and dream for our daughters starts with raising them to like themselves.
If your daughter likes herself, she will strive for excellence, not because she's the hectored cub of a tiger mother and father, but because she'll have faith in her ability to achieve it.
If your daughter likes herself, she'll be courageous and she'll extend far beyond her comfort zone because she won't be afraid to fail.
If your daughter likes herself, she'll have the confidence to pick herself up and try again.
If your daughter likes herself, she will have healthy relationships because she will know that she deserves nothing less.
If your daughter likes herself, she'll nurture her physical and mental health because it's natural to care for what you love.
If your daughter likes herself, she will be empathetic and kind because she won't need to tear other people down to feel okay about herself.
If your daughter likes herself, she'll be joyful and strong, knowing that her greatest friend and most capable ally is herself.
Okay, if you're anything like me and you like to know how you're going to spend your time, let me run you through what we're going to cover today. We're going to start by talking about the 7 pillars that every girl who likes herself must have. So we won't have time to dive into all 7 of those pillars tonight. So we're going to take a closer look at just one of those pillars, which is body confidence. Now, before you tune out and think that you have heard everything there is to know about body confidence, can I just ask you to hold off for a moment, because we're going to go out on a limb and say that much of the advice that parents have been given to build their daughter's body confidence is wrong. In fact, not only is it not part of the solution, it is actually part of the problem. And then we're going to give you 3 things that you can do right now that will actually help to build your daughter's body confidence. And then if you would like to know more, we're going to talk a little bit about our book. And then at the end, we're going to give you a special gift. We have prepared an online mini course to teach your daughter how to handle teasing and criticism like a boss. And Meg, our concierge, will be putting a link to that mini course in the chat at the end of the session.
So, as Casey said, we've distilled our ideas into 7 pillars of raising a girl who likes herself. The first one is a power perspective. A girl who likes herself, we argue, must have a power perspective. And this is about teaching your daughter to look at the world and her place in it in a way that works for her rather than against her. It's about believing that she has the internal strength and resources to be able to cope with whatever life throws at her, rather than being continually tossed around by external events or deferring to what other people think and say. People with a power perspective, they do better at school, they're more successful in the workplace, have better relationships, better physical and mental health, and there's some research to say that they even live longer.
So let me give you just one example of a power perspective. A couple of years ago, we'd come home from Violet's birthday party and we were unwrapping her presents, and Ivy, her little sister, was helping unwrap the presents. And in the process, Ivy broke one of Violet's presents. Now, as you can imagine, there was tears and a lot of distress. And our first inclination as parents was to rush in and solve this problem for Violet, to minimize her distress, to promise to buy her another toy, for example. But that would have done nothing to build Violet's power perspective. What it would have done is teach her to rely on other people to solve her problems for her. So instead, we sympathized with Violet's disappointment and upset about her toy. But we said to her, we can't change that. We can't change the broken toy. But what she had the power to change was her perception, her perspective, how she thought about what had just happened. And we said, you can focus on the broken toy and you can feel upset for the rest of the day. Or you can focus on all the lovely things that had happened today, like all your other lovely presents, the party that you've just had, all your friends and family who love you and wanted to celebrate your birthday with you. And then you could feel happy for the rest of the day, that it was her choice, that she could choose her perspective and then choose how she wanted to feel. Okay, the next pillar that every girl who likes herself must have is body confidence. And we will come back to this one in a minute. But for now, I just want to ask you to imagine for a moment how much better your life would be, or perhaps a woman that you know, how much better her life would be if you could go through life without being dragged down by constant body hatred and bad body thoughts. Imagine how freeing that would be. And now imagine for a moment if you could give that freedom to your daughter. In many cases, it would be life-changing.
A girl who likes herself owns her body. And this one sounds like a no-brainer. While most parents will tell you that or agree with that, and they'll tell their daughter that she owns her own body, in practice, in our society, we often teach girls the opposite. At best, we often send mixed and confusing messages. And at worst, it can leave our girls grossly underprepared to deal with the pressures they will face as teenagers and women. So let me give an example of this. Have you ever noticed how girls are required to show affection to other people, especially adults? They often don't get a choice. It's give your grandma a kiss. It's hug grandpa. And you might have had to do this yourself. But here's the thing. Often little boys are not required to do this. I remember being told to do this as a boy, and I also remember running away and refusing to do it. It wasn't because I didn't like my nan. I was being mischievous, and it was allowed. It was indulged. I didn't have to kiss my nan if I didn't want to. Girls, though, they're often not permitted to do the same. For the sake of not causing a scene or sparing someone embarrassment, we often tell girls to show affection to other people. But what we're also saying is that you are not in control of your body. You do not have bodily autonomy. Now, we've been called the kissing police because of this advice. It's rude, we've been told. Casey wrote an article about this, and the Daily Mail in the UK put it on, I think, the front page of their website. And so, this really, really can get to people. But our girls are affectionate as any kids. They express that affection naturally and spontaneously. And if they don't choose to, then that's their choice. If they don't choose to show affection, that is their choice. Because this isn't about affection. It's about bodily autonomy. And it's about not just telling girls that they own their own bodies. It's about enabling them to practice it.
So body autonomy is actually really hard for girls and women to enforce. So I'll give you an example that happened to me just the other day. I was walking down the street and a man was coming towards me, and I knew this man. I knew him well enough, and he went to give me a hug, and I didn't want to hug him. But in that moment, I did not feel like I could enforce my boundaries, so I allowed the hug to happen. Now, I walked away and I thought, my goodness, I am 45 years old and I struggle to enforce my boundaries. How on earth do we expect a teenage girl to enforce her body autonomy and her boundaries when she's sitting in a bedroom alone, full of hormones, being asked by a boy to send a nude when she doesn't want to, or when she's at a party being pressured to do something she doesn't feel comfortable with? How can we expect her to enforce her boundaries when she's never had an opportunity to practice it in a safe environment and, in fact, has been taught the opposite for most of her life? Okay, the next pillar that every girl must have is calm. Now, by calm, I mean not stressed, not tired, and not overscheduled. This is about finding the courage to push back against the pressure on parents to try to stuff as many skills and experiences into our kids as quickly as possible, because this is making our kids tired, stressed, and anxious. Some kids are so overscheduled that they don't have any time in their lives that isn't planned or adult-led. We've heard stories of kids eating their dinner in cars as their poor, tired, and frazzled parents are ferrying them from one activity to the next. And then they get home and everyone's tired and at their worst, and there's still homework and bath time, and then trying to get them to fall asleep when they're all wired. That isn't childhood. That is boot camp. Now, if you're thinking that maybe we're a little bit over the top with this pillar, I just want you to think about how you feel when you are overtired, overscheduled, and overstressed. I mean, we as adults have trouble managing our emotions when we're like that. We have trouble learning, we have trouble concentrating, we have trouble being creative. Some of our kids are in this state all the time.
So an aspect of this is about how kids are growing up too quickly these days. And we often hear that. Then we hear there's a lot of concern about girls growing up too quickly. And the culprit here is often social media. That's kind of the go-to bogeyman. But what's often overlooked in this girls and kids growing up too fast is the overscheduling plays in this. We argue that overscheduling and constantly measuring our kids is one of the ways in which kids are growing up too fast. Many girls have schedules that are busier than their parents. And if we want to preserve our girls' childhood, then we need to let them have fun in the first place. We need to let them just be kids, to play, to have downtime, to get to know who they are rather than constantly being instructed and measured. So think about it. How come would you feel if every single thing you did was measured against a learning outcome? It's just exhausting. A girl who likes herself is masterful and independent. For the past 30 years, the self-esteem movement told us that if we tell our kids often enough how great they are, then they would believe it. But real self-esteem doesn't come from word presence. A lasting and authentic sense of self-worth comes from doing. It comes from struggling, failing, getting back up and trying again. It comes from teaching our girls the difference between failing well and being a failure.
So we got this one really wrong when we were first-time parents. We were your typical over-anxious, overprotective parents, and we thought that it was our job to make Violet's life as pleasant and easy as possible. So just to give you one example, the playground. So if Violet found it too hard to navigate playground equipment, or if she showed any sign of frustration, we would help her. We'd lift her up and then hover around. And it got to the point where she didn't even try to climb equipment by herself. She'd stand at the bottom of a climbing frame, lift her arms up and look at us. And I remember thinking, wow, we have trained her to be helpless. And then by the time Ivy came along, a couple of things had changed. First of all, we didn't have time to be helicopter parents. But secondly, we were deep into our research for this book and we understood the importance of mastery. So when Ivy was having trouble navigating playground equipment, we didn't rush in to help her. We sympathized with her struggles, we helped her strategize, but she was 100% responsible for her own playground goals. And I remember this one time when she finally got to the top of a climbing frame that was really tricky for her. And the look of pride and joy on her face was priceless. You can't give that feeling to a child, not with praise and not with presence. That feeling, that true confidence and self-esteem can only come through mastery. And it made me think about all the times that I thought that I was helping Violet on the playground equipment. I actually wasn't, because I was denying her the gift of mastery.
A girl who likes herself has strong relationships. Now, many people think that social skills, they just develop naturally and we don't have to teach them. But just take a look at around some of your colleagues or perhaps your extended family, and you'll see that not everyone picks up these skills in the playground. Loneliness and the inability to make authentic, meaningful, and lasting connections with people is, according to some research, as deadly as cancer. And we shouldn't be leaving something that important to chance. And the added bonus of this pillar is that it will strengthen your daughter's relationship with you.
So I'm sure that many of you know firsthand or are starting to see for yourself, friends and friendships are a really big deal for girls. They can have a huge impact on a girl's mental health and even on her academic performance. Girls can get so overwhelmed by what happens in the playground at lunchtime that they are incapable of learning anything in class. So this pillar is about getting ahead of the game, teaching our girls how to choose friends that are good for them, how to deal with conflict in productive ways, and how to behave in ways that reduce the likelihood and the severity of bullying.
A girl who likes herself is herself. This is about helping our daughters grow into the best version of the person they were born to be, not trying to sculpt them into our vision or anyone else's preconceived vision of success.
So this is something else we got wrong in the beginning. So in our book, we talk about the difference between stone parenting and seed parenting. Now, both of these approaches come from a place of love. But stone parenting is when we see our child as a precious column of marble, and that it's our job as parents to sculpt them into the perfect vision of the child that we think they should be. It's us as parents chiseling off the bits that we think are weaknesses and trying to decide for them what their strengths should be, what their hobbies should be, who their friends should be. But as time went on, we realized that by us trying to sculpt Violet into what we thought she should be, we were denying her the opportunity of deciding that for herself, for her to explore her authentic self, who she wants to be, and not what we think she should be. And we realize that if we want to raise our girls to genuinely like themselves, then we need to put down our chisels and pick up our watering cans. Because seed parents see their children as these precious, unique seeds, and that it's our job to provide the right environment and supports. But ultimately, we should be trusting our children to grow and bloom in their own way and in their own time.
So let's have a look at one of the pillars that every girl who likes herself must have: body confidence. There's a lot of talk about body confidence in girls, but as we've just seen, body hatred in girls has never been worse, and the current approach is clearly not working.
So here's a question to start with. Is there anything about your body that you don't like, that affects your self-confidence, that you'd like to change, that makes you feel bad about yourself? Now, I don't need to wait for your answer on that. I know the answer because I am a woman, but also because the beauty industry wouldn't be worth $60 billion a year if we all had body confidence. But the question is why? Why don't we have body confidence? Women have been told hundreds, if not thousands of times that we are all beautiful and we should all love the skin we're in. Our lovely friends tell us we are beautiful. We tell them the same thing. This Dove commercial and others like it, telling us that we are beautiful, has been viewed millions and millions of times. Instagram is full of similar campaigns and messages. But yet think about the answer to the question I just asked you. Think about what women's body confidence is actually like. Telling someone that they are beautiful may make us feel better for the short term, but it doesn't have much of a long-term benefit, does it? In fact, we would suggest that You Are Beautiful campaigns not only do nothing to develop real and enduring body confidence, they are actually part of the problem. Why? Because they keep the focus on our bodies, on our beauty, and on our appearance. They reinforce the message that our beauty is the most important thing about us and that we should all spend a lot of time and a lot more money in the pursuit of beauty. We have been sold a lie that you can give someone body confidence by telling them over and over again that they are beautiful. Just last year, we heard one of Australia's leading parenting experts in raising girls tell a packed audience of parents that they needed to tell their daughters more how beautiful they are. But think again, how many times you have been told that you are beautiful over the course of your life. If this strategy didn't work for us, why on earth would we think that it was going to work for our daughters? There are many problems with the You Are Beautiful approach to building body confidence. But the first reason why telling someone over and over again that they are beautiful doesn't work is that in today's society, our standard of beauty is so unrealistic and so changeable that nobody is ever beautiful enough. Absolutely everybody loses in the beauty game. If you don't believe us, let's take a look at a couple of examples.
Heidi Klum is on record as lamenting her pear shape. Cindy Crawford, a woman who has been on at least 500 magazine covers, she thinks her bum's too fat. These women have spent their careers on the world's most beautiful lists and on the world's runways, and they still have body insecurity. So what do we have to make of all of that? Telling your daughter over and over again that she's beautiful is not only not part of the solution for giving your daughter body confidence. In fact, it's actually part of the problem. All this talk about your daughter's appearance amplifies the importance of beauty in your daughter's life. And so if you remember nothing else from this evening's masterclass, it's this. If we tell our little girls over and over again that they are beautiful, they will naturally assume that their beauty is the most important thing is very important, and they may come to believe that it's the most important thing about them. Now, let's put those two things together. First of all, no girl is ever going to be pretty enough in today's society, given the completely unrealistic and unachievable beauty goals and standards out there. Number two, by constantly talking about our girls' beauty, we make them believe or make them think that being beautiful is the most important thing they can be. How will girls feel when they realize that they have failed at the most important thing about them? How can they be anything else but crushed? how can they possibly like themselves? We argue that excessive focus on girls' appearance is like sugary drinks. It might make her feel happy in the moment, but in the long term, it corrodes her from the inside out. The whole world is trying to tell our girls that their beauty is the most important thing about them. Our job is to help our girls realize that they are so much more than that. And if you're still not convinced, ask yourself this. Why don't men feel the need to take their clothes off and dance around in their undies to prove that they have self-worth?
So before we get into what body confidence actually is, let's start by looking at what it's not. We are told that this is body confidence, a bikini photo, a selfie in a bikini. But this kind of body confidence is very short-lived if it was ever there at all. This isn't body confidence either, because Fitspiration, again, is about trying to build our identity and our self-worth based on how bodies look. So what is real body confidence? It's about trusting and liking our bodies to want to care for them, but ultimately it's about valuing them for what they do rather than how they look. The key to our daughters' body confidence is not for them to be beautiful. It's not even for them to believe that they're beautiful. The key to our daughters' body confidence is for them to not care that much whether or not they are beautiful. Huh? What am I talking about? Let me have another go at explaining that with an example. Let's take these two girls. Now, they're very similar looking. One of them could be crippled by body hatred and all the insecurities that go along with it, while the other girl will go through life blissfully unworried by concerns about her body. She's just living her life. I mean, sure, occasionally she might wish for different physical characteristics, but her concerns are fleeting because in the whole scheme of her life, it is just not that important to her. Similar looking girls, totally different body images. One likes herself, the other doesn't. And the difference is not how they look. It is all about how much they think their beauty defines their identity, their self-worth, and their life choices.
This bit is really important. So if you're multitasking, come back to us. The key to building your daughter's body confidence is to reduce the importance of beauty in her life. It's helping her to care more about what bodies do rather than how they look. We want our daughters to build their identities and their self-worth on other things about themselves rather than how they look. So when our daughters have thoughts about how they don't measure up to the impossible beauty ideals, they won't become a soul-destroying preoccupation. But the problem is we're not very good at teaching them this. Think about how many comments your daughter has received about her appearance over the course of her whole life. Girls can barely leave the house without someone commenting on their dress, their shoes, their hair, their eyelashes, their prettiness. We would bet our house that your daughter has received more comments about her appearance than everything else combined. And if her beauty and appearance is what she hears most about, she will likely assume that it's the most important thing about her. And what happens when she fails to measure up?
So the first strategy that we're going to share with you to develop your daughter's body confidence is to limit the comments you make about your daughter's beauty and her appearance. Now, that doesn't mean that you can never tell your daughter that she's beautiful. It's about getting the balance right. Our girls know that we think they're beautiful, but they also know that we don't care whether they are or not. We want our girls to build their identities and self-worth on a more secure foundation than other people's perceptions of their beauty.
Our second body confidence strategy is don't talk about the appearance of anyone's body, whether it's positive or negative, and that includes your own body.
So take a look at this mother's group. It's not my mother's group, but it could be, and I can take a pretty good guess that these mothers spend a lot of time on fat chat, on talking about losing their body weight and what they don't like about their bodies. Now, this isn't their fault, by the way, and it's not my fault, and it's not yours either. This is what we were taught to do, that part of being a woman is about talking about our so-called flaws. Now, that is bad enough, but take a closer look at this picture and see who else is listening. Every time we talk about our bodies or someone else's bodies in front of our children, we are teaching them that appearance really matters and that we are corroding their body confidence. Now, look, if you're like me and someone tells you that you just need to stop hating your body for the sake of your daughter, you might think, yeah, and pigs might fly. But here's the thing, my body image is not great. So it's a lot better than it was because I've put a lot of work into it, but it is still baggage that I cannot seem to drop. But my girls don't know that. And that's the thing about emotional baggage of parents. We can choose not to unpack it in front of my kids. So my girls would never see me standing on scales or wincing in front of the mirror. And when bad body thoughts do pop into my head, as they frequently do, I try really hard not to say them out loud. Now, that might not seem like much, but for so many of the women who grew up in our generation, it is so much more than we got. Because we have been taught that our bodies were something to hate, wrestle, and punish from our earliest memories. So if you're sitting there right now, worrying that it's too late, that you've already been sharing your bad body thoughts and your body hatred with your daughter, don't feel bad, because firstly, this is not our fault. We have been taught to pass on, to talk about our body hatred, and it has been passed down through the generations. Now, your daughter still has a lot of years left to live, and you still have a ton of influence over her. So let's just agree to leave the past in the past. Today is a new chapter for our daughter's body confidence. And let's face it, if you start today, she will end up getting way more positive messages about her body than most of the women of our generation ever got.
But what about when we compliment other women's appearance? You might think that when we compliment a woman for losing weight or tell her that she doesn't look her age, we are building body confidence. But just like overpraising your daughter for being beautiful, the opposite can also be true, because what we're also saying is that we are noticing, we are judging, and we are policing how you look, and that how you look matters. So our simple rule for building body confidence is this: we never talk about the appearance of bodies in front of our girls. How bodies look, good or bad, is just not something that we talk about. We only discuss bodies in terms of what they do. That might seem like an impossible ask. So many people talk about the appearance of bodies all the time. But look at it this way. There are many topics you don't discuss in front of your kids because they're not appropriate or they're potentially harmful. Well, when it comes to raising a girl who likes herself, developing body insecurity and an obsession about her appearance is one of the most harmful things that can happen to her. So we would encourage you to treat appearance conversations the same way that you treat other topics that you just don't talk about in front of your kids.
Now, while we don't talk about how bodies look, and you might not talk about how bodies look in front of your girls, we live in a society where it is discussed constantly, not just by strangers, but also by family and friends. Our parents, for example, are of the generation where they talk about everyone in terms of their weight, how much weight they've gained or lost. So we have had to have the extremely awkward conversation with members of our family to ask them to please stop talking about body image and the appearance of bodies in front of our girls. Now, look, I'm going to be honest, those conversations didn't go well. Breaking the script that's been in your family for generations is not for the faint-hearted. But here's the thing, this issue is too important to let slide. Our parents and our family and friends have an enormous influence over building our daughter's body confidence. So it's really important that we put on our big girl pants and have really difficult conversations and ask them to please stop talking about the appearance of bodies in front of our children.
The same applies to other family members and close friends. If there are people in your daughter's life who are teaching her the language of body obsession and of body insecurity, then it might be worth a quiet conversation to ask them to support you in building your daughter's body confidence.
Now, there is no doubt that when it comes to instilling body confidence in our daughters in today's society, we have a massive fight on our hands. And we have just scratched the surface today on some of the ways that we need to prepare and arm our girls. But remember that girls are not born hating their bodies. They learn it, and we and their family and friends are their first teachers.
So if you want to make raising a girl who likes herself your parenting goal, then we'd like to share with you, we'd like to share our new book with you. The book really focuses on a whole range of topics, not just body confidence. We also have tips on how to develop a power perspective in your daughter, what to do about diets and dieting culture, a simple principle that will give clarity to all those complicated decisions about what girls wear, makeup, earrings and the like, how to deal with bullies, how to handle conflicts in friendship groups, finding your daughter's spark, that thing that she was born to do, and what about homework and screen time, two big topics for parents.
So after reading Raising Girls Who Like Themselves, you will go from worrying whether your daughter will grow up happy and healthy in today's society to feeling more confident and excited about her future. I have been fighting for a better deal for girls since I was 12 years old, and I marched into Mr. Partington's office to demand that girls get equal access to the Oval at lunchtime. And through my writing, I have been fighting for change for over a decade. But progress is too slow. We can't wait for the world to change because our girls are growing up right now. So we need to prepare them and arm them for today's society as it is. So I guess what I'm asking you is to make the decision to join us in breaking the cycle of insecurity and self-loathing in girls and stand with us as we fight for the futures that our daughters deserve.
So we're really excited for you to read Raising Girls Who Like Themselves, to share that all we've learned with you so that you know exactly what you need to do to raise a girl to like herself too.
So Raising Girls Who Like Themselves is available in hard copy, ebook and audiobook, and is available from Geelong Library. I'm told that there is a wait on it at the moment, but I tell you, it's worth waiting for, so put it on reserve. It's also available at Cook and Young Booksellers, Geelong City, and you can order via their website. Now, to thank you for coming tonight, as I said at the beginning, we have a special gift for you. And this is a mini course about how to teach your daughter to handle teasing and criticism like a boss. Now, the research is very clear that the fear that some girls have about being teased and criticized can absolutely crush them and have a massive toll on their well-being. So the technique that we teach in this mini course, I promise you, is life-changing. I know that that is a really big call, but I stand behind it because I have applied it to my life, and I can honestly say that I would not have had the career that I've had without it. So Meg is going to put a link to that mini course in the chat right now. You can see the URL. It's raisinggirlswholikeThemselves.com/Geelong, or click on the link in the chat and you can register for the course, and then you'll be emailed login details. And I promise you that teaching your daughter this technique is a skill that she can unwrap every day for the rest of her life. Okay, that's the end of our presentation. I'm sorry we've gone over. We don't have as much time as we were planning for questions. So I'll just say before we start that if we don't get to your question and you would really like an answer, please do email us. So we will get back to you. I might ask Meg to put our email address in the chat so you can email us if we don't get to your question tonight. Okay, so the first question that we've got is about boundaries and self-value and confidence. Could you please discuss some language I could give my daughter for her to use when her friends want her to do something for them that she doesn't want to do? She says that she can't say no, or her friends won't be her friends, and she's only 8. Okay, she also says that if she says no, her friends will tell the teacher and she'll get told off. Okay, and it seems like your son, who is 5, also has a similar problem. Okay, look, we started off thinking like that too, telling our girls that they should be friends with everyone. We thought that that's what good parents were supposed to say. But through the research in this book, we realized that there is a difference from our kids being kind and respectful of everyone and them being friends with everyone. I mean, think about that in terms of an adult. We are respectful and kind to our colleagues, but we don't invite them all to our birthday party, and we don't share all our secrets with them or do everything with them, on the weekends. Friendship is a relationship that we choose, and we should encourage our children to choose wisely, because not everyone is good for us. And we have a checklist in our book, a really great kid-friendly checklist to go through what actually makes a good friend, so they can work out whether or not the people that they're playing with is good for them. Now, I just want to share 2 really quick and useful friendship strategies that come from Dana Kerford, who is a friendship skills expert from You Are Strong. And these are also detailed in our book. The first one is, if your daughter's friend is saying something to her that is upsetting her, or your daughter's friend is asking her to do something she doesn't want to do. If this kid is actually your daughter's friend, then you encourage your daughter to pick a quiet moment. Timing is really important here, and have a conversation with her friend that goes like this. When you do this, so when you ask me to do something I don't want to do, I feel bad because. And just having that conversation might be enough for the friend to realize that she shouldn't be asking your daughter to do that or pressuring her to do that. That might not be the case, so your daughter might not get the response that she wants, because obviously the other girl's still learning about how to be a good friend too. If she doesn't get a good response and the friend gets angry or upset or mean, then encourage your daughter to say something like this. I can see this isn't a good time right now. Come and talk to me when it is. Now, that conversation is something to practice at home with her, and it is gold. I promise you. We go over it with our girls, and you can roll it out time and time again for our girls to deal with conflict in a productive way. It's really empowering. And it's also a sign of respect that they're actually trying to fight for their friendship rather than just run away from it or ghost it. Now, if the behavior is mean on purpose, if it's bullying, or the other child is actually trying to hurt your daughter, then having that conversation is not appropriate. In that situation, the best approach is a quick comeback. And that is one phrase that you practice with her at home, because delivery is really important. And it could be something like, that's not okay, or excuse me, or really, and encourage your daughter to deliver it in her biggest, strongest big girl voice, to let the other kid know that she's not putting up with that behavior. And then your daughter walks away. And she walks away with her head held high, knowing that she has stood up for herself. And the research shows quite clearly that if kids can deliver a quick comeback in an emotionally neutral way, then it reduces the likelihood that the bullying will happen again, and the severity of bullying as well. So that is a tip that we should all be practicing with our girls. Even as adults, it's really good to have your own quick comeback. Okay, the next question is from Bridget. My daughter is 7.5 years old. Her arms and legs are starting to get hairy. Her friend has told her that they're hairy, and now my daughter has asked me if she can shave them. Okay, we actually address this situation exactly in our book. It comes up quite often. And I want to say two things about this. The first one is that it is really important for our girls to understand that bodies come in all different shapes and sizes. As we talked about in the presentation, girls grow up believing that there's only one way to be beautiful and it's out of reach. So any opportunity we talk to our girls about how some bodies are taller and some are shorter, some have more fat, some have less fat, some have more hair, some have less hair, and they're all how they're supposed to be, because everybody's body is different and everybody's body is how it's supposed to be. So it is important to just lay that foundation for girls and boys, that there are many ways to be healthy and to have a body. The second thing is to understand that even though it is so heartbreaking when your children come home with these stories, is there are always going to be people in our children's lives, and indeed in our lives, who tell us that there's something wrong with us, that we need to change something about ourselves, or do something different, or like something different. We can't change ourselves or modify our bodies every time someone makes a comment. If we were talking about dark skin, would we be talking about bleaching? No, we wouldn't. I certainly hope not. So it's really important for our girls to understand that they get to decide if they are okay. It is their superpower to make those decisions about themselves, and not to hand that power away to someone else. So that is something that we step through in our digital course. So I'm just going to ask Meg to stick that in the chat one more time. So that online course, we talk through a process of how to talk to your kids so they understand that you really can choose who you listen to and who you don't listen to.
Another question here. What role do fathers and other males play in body confidence for girls? An enormous role. They're incredibly important. And I think there's a couple of things to say. First of all, it's what you don't say and that's to avoid, objectifying women and girls around you. I think that's something that's really, really important, that girls are not getting that message from a really young age, that, this is how men, boys and men talk about girls and women. So I think that's really important. And we've got a whole national conversation going on about that right now. So I think that's incredibly important, first up. The other thing I think is the way in which, fathers and significant males in a girl's life, how they play and, involve girls in play, that they play often in a different way. And that can be a really important way of kind of, drawing a girl into a different way of using her body. And that kind of might be, sort of maybe rougher sports, slightly rougher sports. Really important to kind of make sure that she kind of understands that sort of part of, she's allowed to do that. That is a part of kind of, her experience. But one of the things I think is really important here is to make sure that, and this is a broader point about how you use time and spending time with the girls, is to make sure that the activities are ones that she wants to do rather than the ones you happen to be interested in. So make sure that whatever activity she's engaging in and kind of, using her body, that it's something that she actually wants to do, not something that you kind of want to do and she's just tagging along because she wants to spend time with you.
Okay, we've got one more question. I'm sorry. So I just want to repeat, if we don't get to your question and you'd like an answer, please do email us and we'll get back to you. So this question here is, do you feel positive affirmations can help reinforce the pillars for our daughters? Okay, so Chris mentioned in our presentation about word presence. Telling someone over and over that they're great or that everything's wonderful, it might help for a moment, but it doesn't build lasting self-esteem. So when we talk with our girls about positive affirmations or the like, we make sure that it is about what they have done. When they come home from school and we ask them about their day, we don't just want them to be grateful for something or something nice that's happened. We want them to tell us what they did that was good, what they did that they were proud of, what they did that they're going to learn from and do differently next time. Because real self-esteem comes from understanding that you can control the world around you, that you can make a difference, and that you have power. So I would encourage the affirmations to be about things that your daughter can do and things that she can control, because just feel-good gratitude comments don't have a lasting impact the way that mastery and feeling powerful do. And I actually have that, we write about this in the book. It's called the What Went Well exercise. And there's actually quite a lot of research to back this up. Martin Seligman, a psychologist, very famous psychologist, writes about this. And he suggests every night before you go to bed, ask your kid what went well and what role they played in what went well. And try it when you come home from school, because it will really change the conversation that you have with your child. Okay, so that's all the time that we have tonight for the questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to very many. Before we go, I just want to say that this is more than just a book for us. It is really a mission. We want to help as many parents as possible to raise their girls to like themselves, to break this awful cycle of self-loathing and insecurity and never feeling like they're enough. We want to break that cycle for our girls. So if you know anyone who might be interested or benefit from what we're talking about, please do share the link to this webinar when it goes live. So it'll be on the library website within 48 hours, and please share the message. And one more time, I'm just going to ask Meg to put the link for our digital course into the chat, because once this webinar is ended, we'll lose that link. So please do register for it, because it is really concrete way and a skill that you can teach your daughter how to handle criticism and teasing like a boss, so she won't be crippled by the fear of what other people think about her, and she'll be powerful enough to make her own decisions about who she wants to be in life and the life that she wants to live.
We'd also really like to thank the Geelong Regional Library for hosting this event for us tonight. It's been fantastic to talk to you, and we will get back to those questions. So bear with us, but we get a lot of emails and a lot of questions, so we do try and get back to all of them. So thank you.
And thank you again. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you all.